Welcome back. Well, researchers across the globe have been following warming trends for years now. There's been a constant question if Michigan will become the next climate haven as it's surrounded by one of the world's largest sources of fresh water.
Oh, yes. Well, 6 News reporter McCoy Scribner spoke with an expert on the matter, and he's here for you now with what he found.
Jeff Andreessen is a professor at Michigan State University, but that's not all. He's a state climatologist where he spent years studying the Earth's climate. And just like others in the field, he says we're seeing things get hotter by the year.
Our climate is shifting, changing, and the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, Michigan, are becoming warmer and wetter, or have become warmer and wetter, and that is projected, at least for the next few decades, to that trend to continue.
With things getting warmer, he says there's been talk of Michigan potentially becoming the state people will turn to for relief.
Collectively, in some of these areas, the theory is that it may lead people to try to seek a less stressful, less severe type of climate. And the Great Lakes is frequently one of those areas that's identified because it's a less, we are expecting climate changes, of course, here, but the impacts are thought to be possibly less.
Although there's no proof that people are currently fleeing to Michigan due to harsh climates in other areas, Andreessen says if things stay on track, we could start seeing an influx of people.
There isn't a lot of empirical evidence or data to suggest that this is actually taking place, but the research suggests that it may in the future as again, our climate continues to trend and shift, especially in areas that are more adversely impacted by those changes.
But he says the potential timeline is still a bit foggy, and it all depends on how we treat the Earth.
You've got a range of outcomes, so the timing of this there's a lot of uncertainty about that, because it could be something that only evolves or takes place over many, many decades, but it could be something much earlier than that. Of course, everyone is different in their risk tolerance and what they're willing to live with.
Here for you in Lansing, McCoy Scribner, 6 News.
April is when the planet comes together to celebrate Earth Day. But here at 6 News, we've got something special planned that will last more than just that 24 hours.
That's right. We're calling April Earth Month, and we're celebrating with in-depth stories by our weather team every Monday and by our news team every Thursday about different aspects of weather and climate.
And so tonight, 6 News meteorologist Kelsey Emery is here for you to talk about the difference between climate and weather.
Terms like weather and climate can often be mistaken for one another, but they refer to two completely different things. Let's take a minute to look at both weather and climate. First, weather describes the atmosphere at a specific place and time. Take a minute to look outside your window. What do you see? Is there sunshine? Is it raining? Is there cloud cover in the sky? And are the trees moving? All of those things are related to the variables that meteorologists use to describe how the atmosphere is acting at this specific point in time. Again, the weather is what all of us experience on a day-to-day basis, and it is constantly changing. While the weather describes the atmosphere down to the minute, climate is a longer-term average of weather observations. Observations like daytime highs and low temperatures, or the amount of rain or snow that fell during the day. All of those observations can be taken daily or hourly and have been recorded for many, many years. Climate scientists use these observations to show patterns and trends that our atmosphere has been going through, typically over about 30 or more years. By looking at these averages, scientists can use our current conditions to compare them to the past and see whether we're having a warmer than average month or even a cooler than average month. Another way of remembering this is that weather is what you get, whereas climate is what you expect, meaning that the weather is what we're seeing right now, and climate is more focused on the average trends for a set location. So while weather and climate are two separate things, they are indirectly related to one another. While weather can be unpredictable at times, climate is more tangible to see and understand because it's based on the long-term data and statistics related to weather observations.
Thank you, Kelsey. And we have more information on a special Earth Month section of our website, WLNS.com. Go check it out. Plus, we'll have an Earth Month special coming up at the end of the month.
April is Earth Month, when 6 News focuses on environmental issues.
And one industry that is keenly interested in the changing climate is agriculture, since our crops need to be able to handle those changes.
Our Ray Sherman spoke with some of the experts trying to make sure that Michigan is ahead of the pack.
Climate change is impacting the agriculture industry right here in Michigan, although experts say they are doing things to make sure our state stays one track ahead of it.
Agriculture impacts every part of our lives. It all starts here in the field, in the ground.
So climate change is making your job harder?
Yes, very much.
With the mild winters and longer summers, Brandon Blaine with Gustafson Farms says there has been more wildlife destruction in our crops and an increase in plant diseases. Blaine says he's had to react quickly to the, quote, extreme changes in climate.
What we used to be able to do, we could plan by the calendar. We expected that in a certain week in April and May we could get started with something. Now we don't have that ability to forecast.
It is a challenge. When we look at climate change, a lot of it, as you mentioned, does have negative impacts with regard to agriculture.
Kurt Thalen, who runs MSU's Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center, is working on building more resilient cropping systems. Thalen says bioenergy is one of the main solutions for climate change.
All renewable energy is good, like wind and water and solar, but the only one that really has the capability of removing carbon from the soil and having a net carbon footprint is biomass. So we can decarbonize our whole fleet with a switch to biofuels.
Back at the farm, Blaine shares with me solutions he has come up with to make sure the fight against climate change is a strong one.
So we want to improve our yields, but also rely less on synthetic fertilizers. Another thing we've done on the farm is investing in new technology like this tractor with tracks.
Blaine says they've also started using cover crops to retain plant nutrients. And with the new climate resiliency program, the state of Michigan is dedicating thousands of dollars towards combating these issues as well. George Smith, director of Ag Bioresearch, says this is one of the wettest falls we have seen, which has impacted corn growers, and the frost in January killed our peaches.
The public understands that the climate is changing, agriculture understands that the climate is changing, and we are now in a position, due to this foundational investment from the state of Michigan. We had 18 proposals from the best of the best, really addressing these challenging issues.
Even though climate change is a force, through the use of new farm technology, renewable fuels, and state investments, they believe that agriculture will survive and thrive here in Michigan. Here for now in Lansing, Ray Sherman, 6 News.
Welcome back. If you've perhaps thought that the climate here in Michigan seems to be getting warmer, you might actually be right.
Chief Meteorologist David Young joins us now with a deep dive into the numbers, and he has some interesting results, not just with our temperatures, but with rain and snow as well.
Spring, summer, fall, and winter. Michigan is a 4-season state, but the climate in Michigan, it is beginning to change. We're talking climate today. We're not talking just weather, and it's important we understand the difference between those two terms. Weather, that's something like today's high, today's low. How much rain did we see? When you're talking about climate, now you're talking about long-term averages. So say May 1st, what was the high temperature? Last May 1st, what was the high temperature? And you compare that for 30 previous years, and that's where you come up with the normal high or the normal precipitation. This is a long-term average over a 30-year period. That's what we're talking about today is long-term averages. And in fact, we're going to look at the averages over the past 100 years. We'll start first with our maximum temperature, our high temperatures. How have those changed? Notice you see a steady incline there from around 56 degrees to around 58 degrees as we come up towards our current year. So the past 100 years, we have certainly seen some warming. Our low temperatures are a little different. When you look at that, notice in the 70s and 80s into the 90s and early 2000s, our low temperatures were actually cooling a bit, our average lows, but now they're back up. We're at around 38.9 degrees. So that's up a couple degrees from the mid-1920s. We'll look at another variable when you combine the highs and lows, just what was the average temperature? And the average temperature kind of reflects more of the high temperature trend, which is a steady increase from around 46.8 back in 1924. That was the 30-year average. And now the 30-year average is around 48.5. So it has risen substantially. But you do see a bit of a cooling trend in the late 90s and early 2000s. Rain rainfall and snowfall combined is what we talk about when we look at our general precipitation trends. And that has gone up substantially. Since the mid-1920s, we're around 31.2 inches. And as of this past year, we were at 33.4 inches of average precipitation. So we're seeing a couple more inches of rain and snow per year. But this is the one I get the biggest questions about. Folks tell me, well, if I just feel like it doesn't snow as much as it used to when I was a kid. For some of you, that is actually true. Check out our average snowfall. Now, in the mid-1920s, 47.4 was the average snow. But notice in the late 90s and early 2000s, our average snowfall was around 55.7 inches, so it was quite a bit higher. But as temperatures have continued to warm, precipitation has gone up. Our snowfall is now beginning to decrease, and now we're at 47.8 inches of snow on that 30-year average. Now, no doubt over the coming years, our climate will continue to change, but what we expect is temperatures to generally continue to increase. As temperatures increase, that means probably less snow each winter on average, although our precipitation totals may continue to go up.
Interesting stuff. David, thank you. Well, this April, 6 News is celebrating Earth Month with in-depth stories like ones by our weather team every Monday and by our news team every Thursday about different aspects of weather and climate. And it's just one more way that 6 News is here for you. Welcome back. It's called My Healthy Climate Corps. It's a new state program with dozens of members focused on supporting communities with initiatives to help tackle climate change. Our Rachel Ramsey spoke with several of those members working hard right here in mid-Michigan.
Compost. It goes into the food, and now it's using to support you, and then it's like...
Isadore Mitchell is a My Healthy Climate Corps member, stationed with the city of Lansing as a sustainability project coordinator.
I think it's really exciting.
The Climate Corps started in March, and Mitchell says they're excited to see what can be accomplished. Within the program, Mitchell's focus is on organizing drop-off spots for organic food waste.
Right now, it's a lot of just the planning process of figuring out who in the community do I need to talk with and engage with to figure out where are we going to put the drop-off sites. Are they going to be here at a community garden?
Back in November, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed the My Healthy Climate Plan with the goal of making the state carbon neutral by 2050. Officials with the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, also known as EGLE, say the new program is meant to help meet this goal. Like Isadore, Brian Dickens is a Corps member in the mid-Michigan area. He's stationed at the city of East Lansing in its Department of Public Works as a program manager for solar siting.
I've got 50-some sites that have been identified by the city of East Lansing. My role is to look at the viability of those 50-plus sites to host renewable energy systems in particular, such as solar and possibly wind.
Dickens says East Lansing has already been doing a great job working towards climate goals, but he's glad he can give them a boost to do more and identify areas where work can be done.
They need to continue and to get another kickstart with what they've been doing, which has been fabulous, from recycling and other initiatives for energy savings, but to actually then start developing their own forms of generation.
Another member, Rowan Price, is stationed at the Spartan Housing Co-op, and like Isadore, he's a sustainability project coordinator. But his focus is looking at how to create sustainable lifestyles for those in the co-op buildings and identifying funding opportunities.
How can we impact where they're getting groceries in a way that's more sustainable? How can we impact how people get around in a way that's more sustainable?
30 people with different focuses, all working to make the state's climate goals a reality.
We need as many people doing as much as possible to hit the targets we have to hit. Time is of the essence, and so I think this is, to me, one of the flagship strategies that we have for implementing the governor's My Healthy Climate Plan.
Host sites could be nonprofits, local governments, or state agencies. They all applied for the program and all share the government's goals of making Michigan a greener place. The initiative will end in November, but EGLE officials hope it will pick up again in the future with more members on the ground. Everyone I spoke with feels this new program will help move carbon neutrality goals forward in a timely manner. Here for you in Lansing, Rachel Ramsey, 6 News.
Welcome back. Today is Earth Day, but we here at 6 News have been celebrating Earth Month all April with a series taking a closer look at our climate and environment.
And Michigan has already seen multiple severe thunderstorms and tornado warnings this year, including one just last week.
Yeah, so can we expect more of them as we move into the future? Meteorologist Kendall Wilson looked at some data and sat down with an expert, and she's here for you now with what she found out.
Since 1980, severe thunderstorms and tornadoes have been responsible for almost half of the billion-dollar weather disasters in the United States. And the latest climate data shows that in some cases, severe weather is increasing across the country. For example, if we were to take a look at the number of severe thunderstorm warnings in Michigan from 1986 to 2023, we can see that on average, the number of these severe storms is increasing at a rate of 4% a year. Now, that happens to be the case for severe thunderstorm warnings, but I will mention that not all kinds of severe weather are increasing. For example, tornado warnings in the state over that same time frame have been slightly decreasing at a rate of 0.16% a year. Now, regardless of the overall trends that we have on these graphs, you can see that we do have variabilities that exist from year to year. Those variabilities can depend on many different factors, but Central Michigan University's Assistant Professor of Meteorology, Dr. John Allen, says that La Nina happens to have a direct impact on chances for severe weather in portions of the country.
What La Nina does is you can sort of think about like weighting the dice a little bit. And so we sort of have a higher chance of getting more severe weather events.
When La Nina is present, the jet stream migrates further northward, increasing temperatures, moisture, and instability for portions of the country, which are all necessary ingredients for severe weather.
In fact, it tends to be that there's a disproportionate positive increase over the southeastern United States, even up into the Midwest. So seeing enhanced activity in that area is more likely.
The severe weather season typically peaks in May or June, but research performed by Dr. Allen shows that La Nina can also shift the time frame of that severe weather peak.
In fact, some research we did showed that there was an increase, a shift around about 4 weeks earlier in terms of the season peak. Now, that's, of course, the season peak. A tornado can happen on any day of the year, and so that's just really increasing the odds of seeing an earlier sort of start to the season and a more rapid acceleration into the season.
Currently, there is a 62% chance of La Nina developing by June. But it's important to remember that La Nina is not the only factor that impacts severe weather trends. And even when it is in place, nothing is certain.
Regardless of whether we're in a La Nina or an El Nino state, our expectations for severe weather should be that we're going to get some severe weather. And I think that if anything, we should remember that we should be prepared regardless. And I think that's a really important takeaway, because it only takes one of these events to impact your home to have quite a devastating impact, as we've seen for some recent events in Michigan over the past couple of years.
April is almost over, and tonight we're bringing you the last entry in our special series for Earth Month.
This week, we're taking a look at how climate change might affect the Great Lakes over the next few decades and what Michigan is doing to prepare.
And to answer these questions, our Nick Simon talked with state officials in charge of making these long-term plans, and here's what they had to say.
Over the next few decades, warming temperatures may bring unprecedented changes to Michigan's most valuable resource. That's according to Emily Fennell, the state's expert when it comes to long-term planning for the Great Lakes.
Climate change is definitely the greatest threats to our Great Lakes and their health. So it's really going to be important for us to look at the different ways that climate is sort of intensifying challenges that we've already been experiencing. Those warming temperatures are also going to affect, fish populations and the food web, and that can encourage invasive species, rapid water level changes, runoff from nutrients on the landscape, more harmful algal blooms.
Experts like her are doing everything they can to try and protect the lakes in the face of these changes. That's because as other parts of the country dry up, our state has taken on an even more important role.
We have 20% of the world's fresh water. That is very unique, and we have a tremendous responsibility to be good stewards of that resource and really foster a culture of sustainability and stewardship. We've been really blessed in Michigan.
Other places, like Joliet, Illinois, have not been so lucky. They had to build a brand new pipeline to buy water from Lake Michigan after theirs ran out. State officials are working to make sure that doesn't ever happen here. But they say preparing the lakes for the next century is going to need hundreds of organizations, thousands of projects, trillions of dollars, and a new generation to take the reins. But despite the Herculean tasks in front of them, they still have reasons to remain hopeful.
Extremely hopeful for the future. Yes, we have a lot of challenges in place. I think we're looking at bringing lots of resources, lots of training, and kind of cultivating that next generation of stewards, leaders, and decision makers to make sure that Michigan is well positioned to be a steward of our Great Lakes resources, not only for current, but long-term for future generations.
Here for you in Lansing, Nick Simon, 6 News.
Welcome back. Throughout April, 6 News has been bringing you a series of special stories from our news and weather team for Earth Month. Tonight, we wrap up that series with meteorologist Katie Nicolau discussing how a warming climate brings a greater risk of wildfires, which could make it harder for all of us to breathe.
Over the past few summers, we have seen plenty of scenes like this one from New York City, but here in mid-Michigan, smoky skies have taken over, and that's because of wildfires that are becoming increasingly more likely and widespread. You see, those fires that we deal with are mostly up in Canada in recent years. They're hundreds, if not thousands of miles away, but the smoke from those fires has found its way into mid-Michigan, courtesy of the jet stream. This is going to be a problem that we have to deal with going forward in the future, because as our summers become warmer and drier, those fires will become more frequent. And we are left to deal with the smoke that's really hazardous to health at times, namely because of those volatile organic compounds. These VOCs are part of that smoke that moves through our area. As it encounters the sunshine, though, it breaks down, and we're left to deal with things like formaldehyde, benzene, and acrolein, all chemicals that do not smell good and can be hazardous to people who have breathing conditions. For example, formaldehyde kind of smells like a pickle. Then you have benzene, which smells like gasoline. You typically encounter that near construction zones. You can smell it in the products. Also, acrolein has this very pungent and suffocating odor, all of which is mixed with smoke that could cause problems for people with breathing difficulties and even just people who have strong lungs. Smoke is a hazard that we have to deal with these wildfires, especially as they become more frequent in our area.
April is when the planet comes together to celebrate Earth Day. But here at 6 News, we have got something special planned that will last more than 24 hours.
Yes, we are calling it April Earth Month, and we're celebrating with in-depth stories by our weather team every Monday and by our news team every Thursday about different aspects of weather and climate.
And we're kicking things off tonight with an interview. Our Jorma Duran sat down with a professor at Michigan State who is the perfect person to get Earth Month underway.
MSU professor and state climatologist Dr. Jeff Andreessen joins me in the 6 News studio to talk about climate change. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let's get right to the basics. Is climate change real? And if it is, why would you believe that?
Well, that's one thing we know for sure. Climate change is real, and regardless of their natural factors, but there also, of course, are human factors related to this. But the word we should associate with climate is dynamic. It has changed in the past. It's changing now as we speak, and it will undoubtedly change in the future as well.
Sharp increase in climate change within the past how long?
We have. There have been some very notable trends really over the last few decades, but the long-term trend is unmistakable towards again, the warmer and wetter direction.
What do you tell people who don't believe in climate change?
You know, maybe 30 or 40 years ago, we could have probably debated, is the change real? Well, there's a lot of noise from year to year, a lot of change, but not anymore. All of the best science and analysis of the observational record that we do have, and actually satellite data as well, they all point in the same direction.
What does a warming planet do for us here in Michigan? How is it going to impact us?
Precipitation, the amount of water with this, that there are some differing scenarios. Most of the projections for the near-term future suggest a continuation of where we are now and where we've been over the last couple decades, so that's warmer and wetter. But many of, not all, but many of the projections for the distant future, for the latter half of this century, for example, they suggest perhaps that we would see maybe the same, maybe even a little bit more annual precipitation, but we have to look at the timing and the seasonality of it. And some of what is concerning is that the precip expected to fall in the warm season when we really need the water more, and water needs are greater, that might be less or more erratic.
With Michigan having moderate temperatures overall, and we're surrounded by freshwater lakes, we're okay. We're going to be okay. Are we okay? Does that make a difference?
No, I think this needs to, and we should. This is something we should be thankful and grateful for. I mean, it's a step back and think about a complex issue. But Michigan, we have severe weather, we have tornadoes, we have blizzards, we have flooding events, but relative to other parts of the U.S.
Lots of knowledge right there. That was awesome. We appreciate you talking with us today.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Jorma. Well, this was just part of a longer, fascinating conversation that we are going to put up on WLNS.com. So be sure to check that out on our website and then watch all month long our series celebrating Earth Month.